Welcome to Nomadic Geografik. This series follows the travels of conservationist Brandon Bursaw as he explores America's natural beauty in his RV. In this first episode, we catch up with Brandon as he departs from his home in Brownsville, Texas, and begins his trek along the Gulf Coast to Florida.
Here I go again. This time I'm up ungodly early on a Monday morning to head to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. But not doing paranormal stuff this time. Actually, finally doing wildlife documentary, which is the main thing that I'm qualified to be making. So, got a fire truck. But yeah, so today, driving all the way from Brownsville to Baton Rouge. Actually gonna stay just outside of there. What's it called? Tickfaw State Park. The reviews say there's lots of snakes, so I'm pretty excited about that. So we'll see what we can find. And I guess I'll probably be updating throughout the day because I'll be bored and I want to play with my cameras. Attention to my fuel gauge before getting on a long stretch where there's no gas stations. And yeah, so yes, saved by Sunoco.
Brandon is traveling to Florida to work on his first documentary film, which will explore the decline of the longleaf pine ecosystem and the conservation efforts that are now underway to conserve and restore what is left. The first leg of the journey takes him through the busy heart of Houston, on his way to Tickfaw State Park, outside of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The drive mostly follows Interstate 10, which originates in California and hugs the Gulf of Mexico all the way to its terminal point in Jacksonville, Florida. A marvel of human engineering, the stretch of I-10 that crosses the Atchafalaya Basin in southern Louisiana is an elevated highway over beautiful lakes and rivers. Nearing the end of a long day of travel, Brandon can finally settle into the campsite and possibly do a little herping.
Made it to my site. This place is awesome. Saw a tree frog and some toads on the road on my way in, so seems promising. I'm gonna poke around for a little bit and see if I find anything interesting. Alright, got a good night's sleep at Tickfaw State Park, just outside of Baton Rouge. And now it's on to Crawfordville, Florida.
Brandon is traveling to Crawfordville, Florida to meet up with his old friend, herpetologist Richard Reams, who is allowing him to park the RV at his home while they work together on the film. Along the way, he crosses another beautiful stretch of Interstate 10 that spans across the intricate wetlands and waterways of the Pascagoula River in Mississippi. Having reached the panhandle of Florida, it doesn't take long before the artificial landscape of palm trees and ornamental plants gives way to something more akin to what Florida and most of the southeastern United States used to look like. This is the longleaf pine ecosystem. With thin trunks rising skyward to a majestic crown, forests like this once spanned from Texas all the way throughout Florida and as far north as Virginia. Today, it can only be seen in about 5% of that original range, mostly in fragmented pockets. The first animal Brandon encounters on the trip is this beautiful pygmy rattlesnake. One of the few species of the longleaf pine ecosystem that still appears to be adapting fairly well to the large-scale destruction of habitat, even they are experiencing localizing declines as a result of human activity, with roads being a likely driver of that decline. As its name suggests, this common garter snake is another frequently encountered species in this habitat. 12 subspecies of this habitat generalist can be found from coast to coast throughout the United States. Though they can be found far beyond the boundaries of the longleaf pine ecosystem, grey rat snakes are particularly well adapted for life in the pines. These adept climbers are frequently spotted scaling trees in search of baby birds and other arboreal prey. The eastern narrow-mouthed toad can be found throughout much of the eastern United States, where it spends most of its life underground, feeding primarily on ants. Though they are called toads because of their terrestrial lifestyle, they are actually a species of microhylid frog. Southern toads are perhaps the most commonly encountered amphibian in all of the southeastern coastal plain. This is due in part to their ability to adapt to disturbed and developed habitats, which often include human homes and gardens, where they are commonly seen feasting on insects attracted to lights. After a relatively productive night of herping, Brandon joins Richard as he conducts a part of his 39-year ongoing road transect survey, documenting the herpetofauna of this region. Though Richard takes note of every amphibian and reptile he sees, there is one species in particular that motivates this decades-long effort.
So I'm driving down the roads, searching for eastern king snakes. Back in 1986 to 1989, the species was very common throughout these parts. And I used to find about 3 specimens for every 24 hours of searching. Today, I haven't seen one since 1989. It appears that the species has been extirpated from this area because I've been doing this transect for 39 years now, understand why they completely disappeared. Some of the reasons for why they no longer occur here and why they've been extirpated may be because the habitat has been altered through silviculture. Much of this habitat back in the 80s was still swamp and lonely pine habitat. So we're stopping for what appears to be a yellow-bellied slider, Trachomys scripta. This turtle we have here is the yellow-bellied slider. This turtle is very common in these parts, and it is also a species that you'll often find crossing the roads looking for a place to lay its eggs. Also, the eggs of this turtle are a food item of the eastern king snake, which has declined severely over the years.
Over the last nearly 40 years, Richard has witnessed the decline of not only the eastern king snake, but apparently every snake species in this region. What once was pristine longleaf pine forest is gradually being converted to barren, uninhabitable landscapes.
So the eastern king snake is a species of the longleaf pine as well as the surrounding swamp areas. And with the removal of the longleaf pines and the reduction of fire, the habitat has been able to change, and it's just not a habitat that this species can adapt to well. So the species would benefit from better land management practices using fire, and this would reduce some of the ground cover, this would reduce some of the understory, and basically return the habitat to what the species evolved to. The longleaf pine habitat, which used to be the primary habitat in this region and much of the southeast, has now disappeared. Unfortunately, with the disappearance of that habitat, many of the species within, such as the eastern king snake, the eastern diamondback rattlesnake, and birds such as the red-cockaded woodpecker have all declined due to the changing of the habitat from longleaf pine to silviculture. And silviculture is basically when you come in and you farm pine trees for either the lumber or the paper industry.
Though many animals can still be seen in Richard's study area, their future is uncertain. Every day, more and more lumber is removed and hauled off to paper mills. The removal of the trees, along with the constant truck traffic through these forests, make every day a life or death struggle for animals like this box turtle, which are particularly susceptible to road fatalities due to their wandering nature. The treasure of the longleaf pine ecosystem is the diversity of life found within. Low-lying terrain forms cypress swamps, providing homes for a vast array of aquatic life, including the yellow-bellied sliders and other aquatic turtles, like this striped mud turtle. Usually identifiable by 3 prominent dorsal stripes, curiously, striped mud turtles in this part of the forest are lacking their namesake stripes. Cottonmouths, also commonly referred to as water moccasins, are another well-known semi-aquatic species found in this ecosystem. There is a common myth that these pit vipers are aggressive and chase people, though they will certainly bite if molested. Their primary mode of defense is intimidation. In fact, they get their name from the cotton-white mouth that they hold agape as a warning. Having completed his road transect, Richard decided to show Brandon an example of his family's ties to this land. Reams Landing, along the banks of the Orcilla River, bears his family name. Early the next morning, Brandon and Richard stopped to film and photograph this beautiful scarlet kingsnake. These brilliant climbers navigate the contours of the pine bark in search of their prey, predominantly lizards. However, in this case, it was probably just searching for an escape from the two apes looming over it. Beautiful distractions now out of the way, the pair are now off to meet with another friend and colleague to learn more about this fragile ecosystem.
At the Coastal Plains Institute, our mission is to preserve biodiversity of the Southeast coastal plain. We do that in a variety of ways. The first way is we conduct scientific research, conservation-related scientific research that allows us to generate knowledge about the components of the ecosystems in the Southeast, primarily the longleaf pine ecosystem. And the generation of knowledge allows all of us to know more and care more about what we have left of Mother Nature in the Southeast. Secondly, we provide environmental education to our local community and to the Southeast, to the greater Southeast coastal plain. Y'all, it is of the utmost importance for us as human beings to preserve what we have left of native ecosystems and the species of plants and animals that have evolved alongside our own species. At the highest level, we depend on Mother Nature. We depend on all of these species of plants and animals. And we simultaneously are the smartest and the dumbest species on the planet if we allow ourselves to consume Mother Nature to such a vast degree so as to undermine not only the existence of the things that you see living around me, but our own existence, right? So we all depend on tremendous biodiversity of the biosphere, and it makes great sense for us as human beings or businesses or governments or citizens or NGOs to make decisions that act for the betterment of the preservation of our biosphere. You see a tremendous tract of our biosphere right here, and I guarantee you that as long as I'm its leader, the conservation future here is extremely high.
Please consider supporting the Coastal Plains Institute by visiting coastalplains.org. Thank you for watching this episode of Nomadic Geographic. You can support the channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing this video with your friends. You can also follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and BlueSky. Please stay tuned for future episodes, as well as more from Brandon's other show, Gnome Geo Paranormal.